Alright, so I thought tonight our video would focus on the next installment of Quest for the Relics. Maybe narrating what's there will inspire me to keep going with it. So, now that we've covered the exiled prince, on to the next chapter, where Javi is on stage again. After the standoff with the Zealots was resolved, Javier and the others entered the city gates of Mardunra, finding themselves in the lower town. Although the city watch approached them, the companions were left alone once the identities of Matthias and Allegra were verified. After that, they set off for the city's bazaar. However, before they reached the main square, they decided to split up. A festival of many colors was ongoing, and they didn't want to lose each other in the crowds. But the press was so great that they had no choice. Parade floats in the shapes of elephants rumbled by, festooned with noisemakers that mimicked the trumpeting of the elephant. A courier found Xanathak in all the chaos and summoned him to the castle. The wizard's apprentice went with him without a word, as if he knew why he was being called upon. Matt and Cisco proceeded through the crush with Javier towards the market stalls in search of a weapon suitable for the hapless bard. Allegra, Robidas, and Marinelle were again recognized, and Marinelle persuaded the other two to pretend to mingle with the small folk in light of their upcoming nuptials. A bag full of coins jingled in Javi's pocket, a gift from Matthias. The first thing that caught his eye was a peculiar club with a knotted end that reminded Javi of a mace, except without the spiked finial covered in barbs. The vendor mentioned it was called a shillelagh. The weapon was singing to him in that intangible way that only bards seem to be able to understand. He bought it without feeling the need to haggle for it. Matt and Cisco kept an eye out in case they were either accosted by the city watch or more zealots weaving in and out of the bustling marketplace. After that was done, they visited a blacksmith to ensure that all their gear was prepared for whatever trouble they might find themselves in next. Matthias bought a pair of steel hand axes that he could use as sidearms when the range wasn't good for his longsword. Although Cisco didn't need his guns repaired, no merchant would be able to anyway, he got his sword sharpened and acquired a new baldric for it. I love that word, baldric. Thus equipped, Javi, Matthias, and Cisco pushed their way through the festival, looking for signs of the others. They found Allegra, Robidas, and Marinelle in short order. Still, no one had any idea where Xanathak had gone. Personally, Javi was puzzled where their barbarian companion, Strider, Kamui, had gotten to. Almost as if on cue, he reappeared, clutching a fistful of chicken satay in one hand and a tankard of prickly cactus fruit wine. Huh. That doesn't roll off the tongue as easily as I thought it would. A green wine that was a specialty of the city in the other. Clearly, he had availed himself of some refreshments while the others had separated. I think that would probably work better if I cut the word fruit out. This was a sign that they should all stop for some food. This they did, following Kamui back to the stall where he had acquired his food and drink. Halfway through their meal of hand-pulled noodles and dumplings, Marinelle entered a trance. Javi yelped and spilled half his tankard of ale down his front, sopping it up with his floppy hat. "I know where Xanathak is," Marinelle said breathlessly as she emerged from her trance. "He was summoned to the castle while we were all distracted with other things. I think we should go find him there." Thus they finished eating in haste, before making sure that all their gear hadn't been stolen while they weren't paying attention. However, at the drawbridge leading into the castle, they were halted by the Lord Commander of the City Watch, Uriel Zimmer. "Lord Belthon requests your presence. He is troubled by his nephew's return, and wishes to parley with you all. Go forth, further untroubled by the watch, but hasten to the high chamber." It is unwise to keep the Timbo waiting. And here's a footnote. The formal title, Timbo, is used for the Lord Mardunra and leader of House Matang. The term itself is derived from the Swahili word for elephant. The gang did as they were told and proceeded to the high chamber, led there by the chamberlain, a man named Alok Underhill. With such a guide leading them, they managed to find their destination despite the mammoth size of the grandiose building that rivaled the royal palace at Marialieska. "Welcome, all of you," Lord Belthon boomed. "Normally I would be standing on the ramparts brooding, but now there is no time for that. I have conferred with my nephew Xanathak, and what he has told me has brought me great disquiet. The warlock is rising, so it seems." Nobody knew how to answer this grim pronouncement. "I take it, then, that by your silence what I have heard is true." He looked to his right, where Xanathak was standing. He merely nodded, but did not say anything. "Yes, my lord," Matthias said, taking the initiative to speak. And before I go on, I'm pretty sure that I can't make the voices match up every single time, which is why I'm convinced I won't be a good voice actor. But y'all seem to enjoy it, so I guess it really doesn't matter. I'm probably just being too nitpicky and critical of myself. Taking the initiative to speak. "We have come together to oppose him." It was only 7 minutes? Huh. "Your nephew has been instrumental in our efforts thus far. You may be wondering why I allowed you to enter my hall with your weapons," Belthon said, changing topics rather jarringly. "It is because we need your skills and courage." Here he paused and pointed to the spear that hung on a rack above his ornate throne. "We have a saying here, wisdom guides life. Do you know why our sigil is the elephant? Because they are among the wisest, gentlest creatures in the known world. But lo, when their wrath is raised, they are formidable foes. That spear is crafted with immortal steel, and we call it the tusk. It is the ancestral weapon of House Matang, but it has not seen use since I fought in the last great war. The warlock and all his ilk must be stopped. If you can defend our city, then that spear shall be yours." Pause a minute. Collect myself. Damn it, my water is empty. "What do you need us to defend you against?" Javier said, chewing on his lips anxiously. "Man, I really wish I could figure out how to talk like Jaskier from The Witcher. That's who I'm going for with this. Fearing that a dragon was threatening Mardunra. Pirates. This prompted Cisco into uproarious laughter. "Forgive me my impertinence, my lord, but are you not aware that I am one?" "Indeed, Francisco de Soto, but you are also an ally to the crown, which is why I've not ordered you clapped in irons yet. More to the point, you know the pirates in question." "Not my bloody brother again," Cisco said. "The very same," Belthon confirmed soberly. Bells began ringing out all over the city. "This is not part of the celebration," Belthon said as everyone looked at him. Alok, the chamberlain, burst into the chamber, panting for breath. "The flag of the bronze hand," was all he could say before he collapsed. Xanathak hurried to the window on the left side of the room, which had a view of the city's harbor, which was already on fire. "Where are the Marines?" "Scattered like leaves on the wind, most likely," Cisco growled. "Useless sods." Without another word, he charged from the room, the others following him. Javi brought up the rear, clutching his new shillelagh as though it were a good luck charm. He wasn't keen to get into another fight, mainly because he felt he was the weakest combatant of all of them. "Bloody hell!" he exclaimed. "I'm made for singing songs of mighty deeds and valor, not being in them." Even so, he kept on running, so as to not fall too far behind the others. Fires were springing up all over the lower town, fed by howling winds that approached gale force. Shops, homes, and street signs were all knocked down as the panicked city dwellers sought shelter where they could. "She sells seashells by the seashore. Fly!" Lightning started to come down, almost as if by magic. The entire sky was growing dark as it followed the squall. The City Watch did what they could to fight back the invading pirates, but they were hopelessly outmatched. "Fuck all of you!" one of the watchmen yelled before being impaled by a sword. The wielder of the sword was none other than Alberto de Soto, Cisco's eldest brother. He pulled his sword free of the watchman he had just killed. Behind him strode another man who was taller, broader, and bore more grizzled features, including a wild mane of gray hair that met his salt and pepper beard. He held a rapier in one hand, and in the other a glowing sea glass sphere filled with swirls and wisps of red smoke. This sphere was the source of the hurricane. Husarna Bronzehand was quite literally standing in the eye of the storm. From behind him surged more pirates, wearing lopsided grins and carrying swords, axes, and cudgels. The streets ran red with blood as the bodies piled up. Cisco, however, stood his ground. Sorry. Javi pinned his hat to his head with his new shillelagh. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And watched in awe as Cisco picked off pirate after pirate with his revolvers before unsheathing his newly sharpened cutlass and slashing at anyone who came too close for him to use his guns on. Matthias came bounding into the fray, his new hand axes at the ready. The others plunged into combat behind him, Javi included. It was hard to hear each other, and indeed even move. It seemed like Husarna had limitless numbers under his command. The pirates still swarming ashore suddenly changed course, as if they didn't see Cisco as a threat anymore. Javi gulped. This wasn't a good sign, especially since the vicious scum of the sea were now focused on the others. Javi swung wildly, hoping to hit a pirate and not one of his friends. I really need to get something to drink. The others plunged into combat behind him, Javi included. Right. I lost my place. Javi swung wildly, hoping to hit a pirate and not one of his friends. Up ahead, he could see Cisco clashing swords with Husarna. Although Husarna intimidated him, Javi did his best to push through the howling winds to lend a hand. However, he found he couldn't move forward as fast as he wanted to. Looking around, he saw the others still engaged in combat with the other pirates. Apparently, there had been orders given to leave Cisco alone for the time being. Matthias hadn't ignited his sword, but he was still brawling with his hand axes and launching kicks when he had the chance. Robotos was using throws, holds, and strikes to subdue his opponents, since close quarters was no place to use a bow. Javi could also see Princess Allegra slashing and slicing with the sword she had carried the entire time they had been on their journey. She was doing her best to protect Marinelle, who looked strangely serene in the midst of the carnage. Her eyes had changed to a luminescent violet, but Javi couldn't tell for the life of him what that was supposed to mean. Kamui, on the other hand, was in his element. Roaring with laughter as he lashed out with punches to everyone he could reach, he paused to reach for his enormous sword. Javi could see a pirate go down, a skewer from the satay jammed in his eye. Xanathak, for his part, seemed to be deep in concentration. At last he conjured fireballs, which he cast around, taking care to aim correctly. A whooshing sound drew Javi's attention back to the oracle. Her eyes had gone from violet to a coppery color that he had never seen before. Then, mere heartbeats later, like a great exhale of breath, an explosion of energy rippled out from Marinelle. The force of the blast sent the enemy pirates flying. Marinelle's expulsion of energy also disrupted the maelstrom coming from the ocean cyclone. Although the sphere didn't shatter, it stopped generating its field of powerful magic. What? I'm going to change that from a semicolon to a period. After the shock of the moment passed, Marinelle collapsed. Allegra, Xanathak, and Javi ran to her side to check on her. Meanwhile, Matthias, Robotos, and Kamui advanced through the ranks of terrified pirates. They were a superstitious lot, and they had lost their will to fight. There was a general panicked muttering of witch and devilry. However, they quailed under glowering looks from Kamui, who stood at least 2 feet taller than all the assembled flotsam and jetsam. Husarna and Cisco continued to duel, heedless of the scrum that had just ended. Javi tried to call out to Cisco when he saw someone creeping up behind him, but his shout came too late. Alberto jabbed his sword against his brother's back, hissing in his ear to stop moving. Then, without hesitation, Alberto slammed the pommel of his sword into the back of Cisco's head, knocking him unconscious. Cisco slumped forward, and Alberto bound his wrists behind him. "Come on, you lot!" Husarna commanded. "Away from here!" Heartened by their leader's orders, the remaining pirates got their courage back and menaced the crew, who knew that they were outmatched this time. There was nothing they could do to keep the pirates from escaping with Cisco as their prisoner. Everybody turned around at the sound of approaching boots. They saw Lord Belthon and Alok Underhill approaching. Belthon was carrying the spear he had promised them, the tusk. Javi could see it glinting in the dusky sunlight now that the storm clouds had been chased away. Sunset was coming. Underhill was the first to reach them. He held a parchment scroll in his hand and gave it to Javi, who was closest to him. "Go on," Underhill said. "Open it." "When the wind dies and there is a blood horizon, you will use me. To move me is to pursue your quarry, but you will not know until you have need." "What in blazes is this?" Javi burst out after he finished reading the riddle out loud. In response, Belthon pointed to the water, where the sails of a ship were emerging. The sails bore the elephant sigil House Matang. The ship itself was not large. Even Javi, who was no expert on boats, could tell that it was meant for speed and that it didn't resemble any of the galleys, cogs, or galleons in the Angviri fleet. this chapter not finish? Because I'm almost to the end of the text, I'm pretty sure. Let's skip ahead. Huh. Odd. Could have sworn it got longer than that, but maybe that's where I got stuck. I could have sworn I'd proceeded through the resolution of all that. Maybe that's in another copy of the file. Anyway, Javi, who was no expert on boats, could tell that it was meant for speed and that it didn't resemble any of the galleys, cogs, or galleons in the Ingviri fleet. This was something else entirely. We built this ship with the cooperation of the Temple of Eternal Truth and the Bards Guild. It is faster than you can believe. You have it. We can rebuild our ships, but the mangroves, the pride of our city, Belfon said by way of explanation. Here, you will need this, he added, thrusting the spear handle first at Xanathak, who had moved closer to his uncle, still in a state of shock. Thank you, Uncle. I swear we will return soon. One by one, Xanathak in the lead, they boarded the ship. Matthias and Marinelle were the last two aboard. Javi turned around, puzzled by his behavior. Puzzled by this behavior. I think that was a typo. Matthias was standing stock still, staring off into the distance. Marinelle put a soft hand on his shoulder with a compassionate look on her face. You're in love with him, aren't you? That's the end of the chapter. I guess tomorrow I'll read the last bit and figure out where the hell I was going with it before I just kind of, stopped. Okay, bye.